Vice President Biden, traveling to the Baltic states, pledges American military support if Russia moves against any NATO ally. And Rand Paul, an incredible political coup in one of the most liberal colleges, campuses, universities in America. And tragically, your tax dollars hard at work to pollute the hearts, minds, souls, and bodies of young people in Chicago. This is the voice of resistance.
Standing for truth in the four corners of America. Fighting for justice on the frontiers of the culture wars. And turning resistance into an art form. Randall Terry.
There are several key details that we need to discuss regarding Russia's absorption of Crimea into Russia and the brewing crisis with Ukraine. Vice President Biden is currently traveling throughout Europe, and he met recently in Vilnius with the Lithuanian president and the Latvian president. And he said that the United States would protect all of its NATO allies. Now, that is a key public statement, which clearly was made with the full support of President Obama and the State Department, which means that should Russia launch any type of aggression against Estonia, Latvia, Lithuania, Poland, or any NATO ally, but those four are critical, of course, because they are part of the former Soviet Union, that the U.S. would respond with force. So we now have another one of President Obama's lines in the sand. We can hope, we can believe that the president and our NATO allies intend on making that offer good. Right now, the situation demands cool heads. Let me point something out that's really critical. Ukraine suffered unthinkable hardship, brutality, and murder from the Soviet Union under the leadership of Joseph Stalin. Literally, between 8 and 10 million people were starved to death. At least 3 million children were starved to death. Members of the Communist Party from Ukraine who complained to Stalin that what he was doing was too hard on Ukrainians, they were killed or sent into exile in Siberia. So the hatred of certain Ukrainian people against Russia is so deep-seated as to be unshakable. But part of the problem is that after Stalin murdered millions of Ukrainians, he shipped, either by force or with the approval of those being sent, he sent Russians to occupy their lands, their farms, their homes. It's very similar to what happened with the British, how they treated the Irish. And so you have a partition in Ireland that is based in part by the brutality that the British exercised over Ireland. And right now, we do have a sizable minority of people in Ukraine who would like to be united with Russia, but it's because they're ethnic Russians who came during the pogroms of generations ago. All right, so that's issue number one. Issue number two, Putin has a sizable leverage against Europe by virtue of gas for heating. Now, we do have spring coming up, so some of that leverage is going to go away. Next, Russia is beginning to develop its oil fields in a way that would free it economically to choose a more belligerent course. Next, Russia's military, about 845,000 strong, according to press reports, is not equal to the U.S. as far as training, armaments, infrastructure. But what Russia has, as they have brazenly pointed out in recent days, is the ability to turn the United States into a radioactive ash heap. Okay? If it wasn't for Russia's nuclear arsenal, with which they can use to blackmail people, to get people to back down, they would not be eyeing Crimea. I'm sorry, they would not be eyeing Ukraine. The United States and other European allies have joint training exercises planned with Ukraine that the U.S. and Ukraine have said are going to go forward sometime this summer. The obvious question is, will Russia make a military move against any portion in the east or the south of Ukraine now, before those military exercises are launched? I've stated on this program that I think that historically, Crimea probably belongs in Russia. The way Russia went about this could have been a lot better. But right now, that's water under the bridge. However, under the principles of just war, the principles of self-determination that might allow Crimea to go into Russia would probably say, no, Ukraine should not be absorbed, annexed, or invaded. That leads to the ethical question, the policy question, the military question of whether or not NATO, including the United States, will do anything militarily or providing weapons to Ukraine to guarantee their independence from Russia. That's what this is going to boil down to, folks. All right? Crimea is lost. Crimea has been absorbed. It's a fait accompli. The question now revolves around Ukraine and the will of America and European nations to stand against the aggressor and to stand for the innocent. We'll keep this under close watch. This is the voice of resistance.
You have two choices. I mean, you can try to raise your children by design, or you will raise them by default. There are no perfect parents. We're going to get it wrong sometimes. If we have a plan, we've got a better chance of getting it right in the long run.
There is something deep within the heart of every human being that longs for parental acceptance and approval. When does a boy become a man?
Get a group of guys around and ask them that question.
I don't think there's a certain age. Some men stay boys their whole life.
I would say, 16, 18 years old.
Wow, that's a good question.
When they get bar mitzvah?
Well, I think when he has a child. So I just became at 56, 56 years old.
Without the power of the Holy Spirit changing us and giving us power over our sin, we can't hope to be the dads that our kids need us to be.
Senator Rand Paul has pulled off a political, or at least a public relations coup that has to have the Hillary people in particular and the Democratic Party shaking in their boots. Senator Rand Paul went to what is arguably, undeniably, one of the bastions of left-wing lunacy, Berkeley, the University of California's Berkeley campus. He went there and made a speech about privacy and about the NSA spying on us and that our liberties are under attack. Received several standing ovations throughout his speech. Now, let me explain to you why this is so critical. The Republican Party has been losing young people steadily, all right? It's one thing for the remnant of conservative Republicans who are young and who attended CPAC recently. It's one thing for them to give Rand Paul a standing ovation. It's something important and impressive for Rand Paul to get 31% of the vote in a presidential straw poll. But that's in a meeting that people wanted to go to from all over the country, made up of pretty strong conservatives. But to go to Berkeley, where the largest percentage of the students don't claim any religious affiliation, nearly 50% of them don't claim a religious affiliation. Only 17% of the rest of the country hold to that. Oh, I don't care anything about that. So, I mean, these are people who self-consciously say that they're liberal. Only 12% of the students on the Berkeley campus call themselves conservative, okay? So here goes Rand Paul right into the lion's den and gets standing ovation after standing ovation. This has to send shudders down the spine of Hillary. But I'll one-up you on this. It should send shudders down the spine of the Republican establishment as well. Because the Republican establishment hates Rand Paul. Much like they hated Ronald Reagan. And Ronald Reagan brought a lot of young energy into his campaign. First in 1976, but more importantly in 1980 when he won the primary and then won the presidency. I was 20 or 21 years old when I cast my first vote for any elected official. It was for Ronald Reagan. It happened with a lot back then, and it hasn't happened since. I mean, can you see Bob Dole or Mitt Romney or John McCain inspiring enthusiasm among the young? I don't think so. But Rand Paul is doing it, and he's doing it across party lines and even across ideological lines. Another bit of good news for Rand Paul. The Kentucky legislature has introduced a bill, I believe it originated with the Kentucky Senate, to clarify that their state law that prohibits somebody from running for two offices simultaneously does not impact those running for two federal elections. What that means is Rand Paul in 2016 could run for the U.S. Senate to keep his seat and could run for president. Now, for those who would cry foul, please understand this is very common. Vice President Biden ran for Delaware senator and won it and became vice president in the same election, two federal offices, and then he resigned his Delaware seat. Paul Ryan, VP candidate under Romney, same thing. With Dukakis and his vice presidential running mate way back in 1988, Lloyd Benston, senator from Texas, he did it. So this is not uncommon, and I did it. I ran for the U.S. House in Florida in 2012 and ran as an independent for president in West Virginia, Nebraska, and Kentucky. And because I was a federal candidate for two different offices, I could run ads, television ads in Florida, and I could run television ads in the states and the surrounding states, in the states where I was on the ballot. So if the bill fails, they've got a chance to introduce it again in 2015, or they could simply go to their state attorney general asking for clarification. Nevertheless, it's a great coup for Rand Paul. And by the way, for those of you who don't remember, you're going, why do I remember Berkeley? Drugs, LSD, so-called free love, which was sinful fornication stuff, the so-called free speech movement, which did have great value for free speech. There was a lot of bad things that came out of Berkeley, and so much so that Hoover and the FBI spent more money spying on people at Berkeley than any other campus in America. So when I say Rand Paul scored a political coup by going to Berkeley and getting a standing ovation, words cannot overstate the impact for both the Democratic establishment and the Republican establishment. Go get him, Rand Paul. This is the voice of resistance. Do you want to have knowledge, wisdom, discernment? If so, you have to read good books on theology, history, books that look at the lives of great men and women. So to help you to become a more effective Christian, a better witness for truth, somebody who can engage in productive conversation that exhorts and edifies those that you speak with, we're going to do something crazy. We're offering you these 7 books for a gift of any size. You just pay for the shipping and handling, and then give whatever gift that you can, and we will send them to you. But just to make it a little bit more crazy, I will send you a second copy of my 3 books, autographed. You can give them as a gift to your pastor or to a family member and help extend truth and justice in the world. This is while supplies last. For those of you who have small children in the room, I suggest that you tell them to leave as I bring to you news out of Chicago. Your tax dollars hard at work. For the next 5 years, $20 million will be spent to give away condoms at 24 Chicago high schools. Now let me read to you the quote from Rahm Emanuel, who was, by the way, the president's chief of staff. Okay? He said, quote, "I want everybody to understand that doesn't mean you're absolved, either as a parent or an adult, to talk to an adolescent about responsible behavior, respecting who you're with, and doing what's right, not what's convenient." This is laughable. Now, just so you understand, he supports the program, all right? Rahm Emanuel is in complete support. Now, I want you to just think through, first of all, think through the fact that statutory rape involves sexual activity with people that are under 18. The last time I checked, most people in high school are under 18. So they're giving these items to young predatory males and perhaps young girls who are from God knows what kind of family situation, and saying to them, here you go. Can anyone see the connection, pray tell, between giving these condoms to young people, to teenagers, see the connection between giving them to them and saying, by virtue of that fact, this is okay behavior. This is normal. This is what we expect you to do. The people who are giving these condoms to high school students are despicable human beings. They're perverted, okay? And they'll say, well, it's to curb teen pregnancy and it's to curb the spread of sexually transmitted disease. Well, I will grant you that there will possibly be fewer STDs, it's possible, and there will possibly be fewer teen pregnancies, but what there's going to be a lot more of is sexually illicit behavior. There's going to be teen predators who joke about it, who have a pocket full of condoms, and then are putting pressure on girls in high school. That's what's going to happen. I have to just go on this quick rabbit trail, then I'll come back. For those of you who want to mock homeschoolers and say that the children who are homeschooled need more socialization, look at all we're missing out on. How will I even face my sons and be knowing in my heart that I'm denying them this type of socialization? Anyway, if you put a pile of cocaine in front of a group of high school kids or a pile of marijuana and said to them, we don't think you should do this, but we want you to do it safely. We don't want you to get any bad weed or bad cocaine or bad heroin that's laced with something that might kill you. So we're going to provide you these things. We don't want you to do it. And by the way, it doesn't absolve you parents and you adults from having, quote, a discussion about responsible behavior, respecting who you're with, and doing what's right, not what's convenient. Do you see how ludicrous it is? By giving them the condoms, you are by definition putting your imprimatur, your permission, your approval on that type of behavior. It is immoral. It feeds to a criminal element of statutory rape. It will lead to more sexual promiscuity, more heartbreak, more lives marred, more souls marred, and maybe, God forbid, but it's possible that there will be fewer people in the maternity ward, but more people in hell because they went down a path defying their maker and the behaviors that their maker wants. And they thought, oh, this is okay. This is what's natural. This is what we're supposed to do. And it ends up leading them away from faith in God, doing what's right. And then they end up in a shipwreck. But don't worry. They'll have a free condom from the government on their journey, and maybe they'll get some clean needles for the drug addiction that comes when they are involved in some of their wild sex parties as teenagers. But you're not absolved, parents. No, Mr. Mayor, it's you who's not absolved. You will give an account. You and your cohorts will give an account to Almighty God for what you have done. This is the voice of resistance. Do you want to get America out of the hands of wicked and unjust men and women who are destroying the republic before our eyes, and put leadership back into the hands of righteous men and women so that we don't die as a nation? Well, you're talking about social revolution, and there are rules in social revolution. We can look at the victorious social revolutions of the past, such as the end of slavery, the end of child labor, women's voting rights, the end of segregation, and so much more, and learn from their victories. Look at their actions, their images, their rhetoric, their sacrifices, and their final fruit. We will send you this series that originally cost $129, 7 books for students, 1 teacher's guide, if you'll give a gift of any size and just pay for shipping and handling. Take advantage of it today. Somebody sitting in this chair is sorely tempted to focus on President Obama recently being on the Ellen DeGeneres show and his dancing and her sucking up to him saying, everyone is so happy what you did with Obamacare. Maybe she doesn't read the news. I don't know. Anyway.
There is not much dancing in the Situation Room, as a general rule.
That's what's missing. That's what you have to do.
That's the problem.
All right.
Back on me. Okay, I'm really tempted to focus on this, but I'm not going to. It's just such an embarrassment for the country at this time with what's going on with Ukraine, Crimea, what's going on with scandals with the IRS. I loathe this presidency. I loathe this presidency for what it's doing, the evils, the ills that it's doing. So I don't want to talk about it. What I want to say is this, folks, listen to me. We need new leadership. Remember the words of Almighty God. Who will go? Whom shall I send? Who will go for us? I believe, what was his name, the great evangelist, who said, the world has yet to see what God can do through one man who is fully committed to him. Dwight L. Moody. I am convinced that if you will say to God, Lord, here I am. Please use me as you will, for your purposes. That if you will say that you will go places. If you will discipline yourself, if you will pray, if you will study the scriptures and study church teaching and study history and study the great heroes of the human race and model your life after them instead of after the wet noodles that are littering the landscape, that you can become a force for righteousness. Go to our website, avail yourself of all the material that is there for free to help train you to become a warrior and a leader. We need new leadership. God bless you.